Ryan, what's the effect when maybe non-traditional guys, whether it's Coleman or Huberdeau, get under the skin of opponents? Coleman thought Huberdeau looked like he was antagonizing Ekholm a little bit. Like, what is it when guys that aren't necessarily in those roles do that? How can that affect a group?
If you do it the right way, I think it shows that you're engaged and ready to play. Now, the fine line is we don't want to cross a line and sit in the penalty box in those situations, because a lot of power plays around the league will make you pay. But I think we did a really good job of making sure we were engaged and ready to play, and that includes those two guys.
How would you explain Jonathan Huberdeau's turnaround from December 31st to now? I believe he has 21 points in 22 games in that span.
How would I explain it?
Yeah, why do you think he's seen success?
Sometimes offensive guys can be a little bit streaky. I think over that stretch, there was chances early on that he was getting that nobody was finishing on. Now it seems like when he's setting people up, like Dryden last game, like there's a good example of it. Dryden finished. But I also think when he went through that tough month where nothing was happening, you start to feel the weight. And once the calendar flipped, I guess you can say, things started to go for him, and now you feel better about yourself, especially when you're an offensive guy and you know that's part of your role to help the team win hockey games. So I think he's just feeling better about where he's at right now, and he's starting to feel more comfortable with the plays that he's capable of making.
Ryan, what do you like about Dryden playing on that line?
I feel like he brings a little bit of edge to it. Like we've talked a little bit about him before, that he has an understanding of how he has to be in certain situations. So I think he sees that on that line, if he can be first on pucks and try to finish hits. I think he had 4 or 5 hits for us that last game in Edmonton. He can create some open ice and loose pucks for the other two guys to try to generate and make plays. If he's on a fourth line per se, he knows he's an up and down guy and pucks are going to get up and out. But the ability that he has to play with those top guys. When he was younger, he was a skilled guy, very much a skilled guy. But he's just learned how to adapt his game a little bit over the last while.
You hear all the time that those sort of quote-unquote depth guys sometimes lose their identity when they get a chance to play up and down the lineup. What do you think has allowed him to sort of keep his no matter where he is?
Probably he's been bounced back and forth. So the experience of trying to figure out, okay, like why am I getting bounced back and forth from the American League to the NHL, and what can I do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Or if it does, how do I be a good pro in both areas? So I think it's a lot of growing up and maturing, understanding what's needed out of a player, because he's a smart young man. So I think he really does get it.
There's a lot of talk about identity when it comes to every team, but with you guys, we've often heard about defensive responsibility and being hard to play against, which is true. But you guys, in terms of 5-on-5 goals, you're 7th in the league since January 1st. You guys are scoring 6, 5 in your wins. Has that become part of the identity of the team?
I don't think so. I mean, I would like to see it the other way, where we're not giving up 3 or 4. That would be more important for coaches. I think the identity that is starting to take hold is we don't rely on 1 or 2 players. We have a lot of people that score for us. We have a lot of people that are involved in the offense, and we have a lot of people that are expected to help protect leads, if you will. So I think we have a good mix throughout our group right now.
I assume that's a goal for most teams, but it's working for you guys. I mean, how has that been fostered? What's allowed that to work?
I think you look at your leaders. I think they're willing to accept. Some guys have to give a little bit of themselves up in those situations, and I think we have had people that have done that. I think we've had young guys that have pushed to earn some more opportunity and more ice time, and I think that's made us a more competitive group.
Your team beat 3 of the best teams in the league last week. I know every game is different, but generally speaking, what did you like about the team game last week? And was that the best or one of the best stretches you guys have had this season?
Yeah, it was good, Wilsey, for sure. Couple of those games we had great starts. Edmonton against Boston. Boston, we really came out of the gates the right way, and I think we put our opponent on their heels, and that's something that's important for us. But even when we were pushed a little bit in those games, we didn't fold, and we pushed right back, and that's something for me that we're probably most proud of in those situations, and we'd like to see that mentality continue.
Further on Danny's question, when you say give something up, the veterans are doing, what do you mean by that, Ryan?
Sometimes there's certain guys that maybe in the past have played 19, 20 minutes, and they're playing 16 to 17 and a half this year. And it's a big ask when you're asking players to do that. So that's one of the examples I guess I would talk about.
Brian, Andre had seemed to gel really quickly when he was put on that line with Yegor and Jonathan. It seems like maybe it's fallen off. What does he need to do to get back to being a good fit with those two?
The last game they played together here, his first period was really good. And that's what he needs to do. He was on the puck. He was a threat with it. He was shooting the puck, which we asked him to do a little bit more of. And then as the game went on, it was more of a coaching decision to reduce some of his ice time. But when coaches look back at it, sometimes you think a player was terrible, and then you watch the video at the end of the game, and you're like, this guy was actually pretty good. You also do it the other way, that when you see it live, you're like, oh man, I thought he was great. And when you go home or in the morning when you watch the video again, you're like, oof, I was wrong on that one. So he had a really good first period the last game here. And again, because he's protecting pucks, he's strong on them, and he really had a nose for the net. He was looking at the net every time he had the puck.
Is there any concern about Markstrom's availability tomorrow?
No concern.
Sorry, I want to just one more on Dryden. You talked about some of that growth in his game. I'm curious, has some of that happened very recently? I'm curious if he's a different player now for you than he was maybe at the beginning of the season.
He made our team out of camp, right? So he did a lot of good things where, in a coach's mind, you see the work that a guy puts in, you see his commitment to playing on both sides of the puck. So I don't know if there really has been. I think he's trying to make the most of his opportunity that he has, and I think that's what it's coming down to.
Ryan, you've been telling us kind of throughout this season, whenever we talk about leadership, Blake's name, despite not having a letter, was almost always included. Kind of gone out of your way to include him in that. And now you have a rotating A. It's probably not a surprise to us. He's worn it a couple times already. Can you just describe his sort of importance and leadership role, how he goes about that with your group?
Well, one thing away from the ice, maybe one of the best person or people you would ever meet. He is a really good man, good family. On the ice, from him, I'd assume in talking to his parents, I think I mentioned it before, he's had to work for everything he's gotten all the time, and that's his makeup. So when he comes to the rink, you know what you're going to get out of him. I mean, might have the odd game that's off from his standards, but that's part of an 82-game schedule. He has ingrained in his head how he has to be every day on the ice in order to be successful and help our team win.
And so when you have, especially now, a bunch of young forwards around him, is that a lead by example thing? Is it him sort of shepherding them along? How do you look at it that way?
He's more of a lead by example. I see Naz as a guy that's pulling them on by helping the two young guys with him. I think Coles does it the way I think he knows how, and that's playing the right way. And I think with him, it's a hope that guys will see what I do on a daily basis, and they're going to follow suit.